All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the coffee break from WZ on this wonderful Tuesday morning. Hopefully, everyone is having a great week so far. This morning, my coffee is brought to you by the Harrison County Law Enforcement Training Academy down in Gulfport, Mississippi. So today, I'm going to talk about a couple things. First is how graduates. So obviously, a lot of people are graduating from college right now, which is a bizarre time to graduate, I'm sure. And I can empathize a little bit. I graduated in 2009, so went through the financial crisis and all of the heartache and stress that came along with trying to find a job when companies were primarily just laying people off. So I'm going to talk about some tips and things to do to best prepare yourself to find that job that's really the best fit for that first role. And then the second thing I'm going to touch on, excuse me, quickly is individuals who are changing careers. So whether that's a forced change based off of being laid off, or if that's just an internal change and you've decided now is the best time to do it. So talking about going from private to public and public to private. All right, so first for graduates. So if you've been in your career for a long time, this does not directly apply to you. I'm sure you can think of somebody who, whether it's a son, a daughter, a niece, a nephew, whoever it may be, who is in this process or maybe going through it soon. So this is great information to share with them to help them out. First thing to think about is what direction do you want to go? A lot of people in this industry, and when I say this industry, I mean criminal justice, law enforcement, whatever it may be, especially in college, you immediately think public sector. I was the same way. I immediately thought that was the route that I wanted to go, and it's the route that I ended up taking initially. What I'd like for you to consider is all of your options, right? Public sector and private sector. Public sector position in law enforcement is one of, if not the most admirable jobs that you can have. However, it is not for everyone, right? So just because you've graduated with a criminal justice degree and you think you want to be in that industry, I would challenge you to explore all of your options, right? So understand what is available to you. It's not just law enforcement. And if you feel led to law enforcement, which is what most people do who go into that industry, you feel called, then pursue it, right? Pursue it with everything that you have and make the most of it. But a lot of people don't consider what else is there in criminal justice. You kind of get narrow-minded to only law enforcement as an option. So other options are private sector when it comes to retail, obviously loss prevention. You could even go down fraud investigations, human resources investigations, ethics, all of these different types of things. There's banking industry, all sorts of amazing investigator positions within the banking world. Insurance industry, again, there's a lot of any type of industry has some type of regulatory service attached to it for the most part. So thinking about what you're interested in and then looking into, okay, how can I apply my passions, my skill sets to that particular line of work? And that's the best practice. So when you do these things, make sure that whether you pick law enforcement or you pick private sector, make sure you go in educated. So let's say you go in for public sector. So you want to go in law enforcement position. First and foremost, and I preach this all the time, make connections with people who are currently in that line of work, right? Ask them the tough questions. Ask them the questions about, what if you could be in my shoes? If you were to start over, what would you have done differently? Or would you have done anything differently? How does this position impact your personal life? How does this position impact your family life? What are the promotion potential possibilities within this role? What are some of the concerns that I would have? What are some of the tough questions that you wish you had have asked, right? Think of all of these creative questions to ask people currently in the role so that you can go in educated. For public sector, if you're looking local law enforcement, ride-along, I can't stress ride-alongs enough. Those are, that is the most water through a fire hose type experience you can get for a real type of interaction and experience that you can expect from that type of job. And while you're doing the ride-along, you're with the best resource, the actual police officer or sheriff's officer that you can pick their brain and ask them questions. So absolutely put yourself into it, immerse yourself as much as you can before you dive in and you make that decision. Lastly, with public sector, don't forget there's more to law enforcement than local law enforcement, right? State and federal agencies hire people right out of college all of the time. So it's not necessarily as common, but it's absolutely a possibility. So put yourself out there, look for the agencies that you may be interested in within your respective state, look at federal law enforcement agencies and see what you would need to maybe qualify for one of these roles right out of college, because it does happen. So just don't limit your options to what you think is only available. There are so many things available for public sector. Private sector, same type of advice, reaching out to people in the industry, asking those questions, figuring out what you would want to do. For people right out of college, you kind of go in with this idea of, well, I just spent 4 years plus getting a degree. I shouldn't have to start entry level. I would challenge you to check your ego at the door when it comes to applying for jobs in the private sector, because realistically, you're going to want one of these entry level positions, a single store management type role, whether it's in loss prevention, human resources, whatever it may be, just to get your feet wet. It's a completely different world in retail. No matter what you studied in school, especially if it was criminal justice, it is not a direct one-to-one. So getting yourself into that role, checking your ego at the door, and knowing that your hard work is what's going to escalate you quickly once you get in and you prove yourself. But don't think that I'm entitled to any position just because I have a degree. That's not how it works, right? That's not how it's going to happen for you. So put yourself out there, get your feet wet, and then work your way up, and that will pay dividends. So last thing for people, the flip side, the other thing I wanted to talk about is people who are changing careers. Right. So if you are currently in law enforcement looking to go public sector, don't assume it's a one-to-one transfer. Right. These are not the same jobs. A detective is not the same job as a private fraud investigator for a private company. A detective or a police officer is not the same job as a loss prevention agent in a store. Very, very different. There's some commonalities and some skill sets that transfer well. But there's a lot of things that are different, right? So making sure that, again, that ego piece needs to be checked at the door. You bring a wealth of amazing talent and skill sets to this new position, but just make sure that you're not going in thinking that you're entitled to anything, because that's not how this works. You want to make sure you go in, you figure out what job you want, and then how can you put yourself in the position to be the best candidate for that position. One really quick, easy tip that I'm going to leave you on: if you are public sector switching to private sector, a lot of times people want to talk to people who have done this, right? Ask people who went from a lieutenant in the police department and went over to the private sector. Ask them specific questions that you think will have direct application to you. The easiest way to do this, outside of if you know anybody, if you don't, get on LinkedIn, type in police lieutenant, and then type in under current companies. Pick the companies that you're interested in. So Bank of America, Citibank, Target, Amazon, whatever, and then hit search. What's going to happen is it's going to populate a list of people, and you'll see under their current title, it will say previous position lieutenant, or whatever you typed in, previous position detective at whatever police department. So then you can click on that person and send them a direct message and just pick their brain. You'd be shocked how many people would be interested in making those connections with complete strangers. So moral of the story, go in educated, and it's gonna be okay. Everyone, whether you're changing your career or you're just getting out into the workforce from graduating college, you will do amazing. Time will fix all of this, and you just got to be patient. So have an excellent week, and we look forward to seeing you more. We look forward to seeing more of you later on this week. Take care.